This is the kind of society we have become, absolutely idiots. We are backing at the moon instead of holding those who have to be held to account. I mean, I was driving from KwaZulu-Natal, the drought that is coming. The maize leaf is dry like I don't know what. And with that drought, there will not be food. We also don't have water, and we have not had electricity. And education is perfect.
Guys, even as a non-South African, the more I listen to this analysis by former statistician General Lehotla, Pali Lehotla, I'm really shocked and scared for the future I really see for South Africa. He's really breaking down some really scary, but at the same time really important and interesting facts that black, white, Indian and colored South Africans need to know about the future of South Africa going forward. He's actually arguing about how the blacks and the colored somehow have remained stuck, while the Indians and the whites have, in a way, the proportion of people who are skilled in proportion to the population actually have gone exceedingly, have moved forward from 1997 all the way to 2004, while the blacks and the coloreds, and this is actually generating some forms of feedback cycles that actually is affecting the pace in which South Africa should grow. And, he's actually blasting the policies of the government, the ANC, but now the GNU, and how, really, really lots of things to really consider in the arguments with the problems in South Africa going forward. Let's listen to Pai Lehotla break down this whole issue, the problem he sees with the future of South Africa going forward in terms of black people keeping and generating wealth, but also the wealth of the whites and the Indians in South Africa. And I'll be back for a really interesting analysis on some of these slides he shares in this video.
End on the big moral call you're making, Dr. Lehotla, given all of this and the can-do-ness that South Africans must engage in now, is for black people to create our own wealth. You ask why we are withholding our money. You ask why we are looking for someone to save us. How, in your opinion, are we missing the opportunities to create wealth when the environment doesn't seem to be conducive for wealth creation?
How many minutes do you have? Because I think I need one more slide.
We can do. We'll give you 4 minutes
Let's go to 6. Slide 6. Because slide 6 is the most telling slide. You see, this particular slide tells a tale of what has happened since 1994 to 2016. I could reproduce this slide for 2024. You can see how this part of coloreds and blacks got stuck through time. You can see how that slide grew. You see, that's growth.
And who does that represent?
That's white, and this is India.
Right.
And Indians are catching up. And why are they catching up? Because they did something in 1953 when Verwoerd did what he did. Now you can see how these... So blacks are stuck, the gramophone.
Yeah.
And they play the record when it has a groove. Mm. This is what is happening to the coloreds and the blacks. This is the people that are skilled in the workforce. The proportion of the skilled in the workforce as a proportion of their own population group. It's stuck. When it's stuck like that, it cannot go forward. Absolutely not. And this is what has been the return for democracy. It was not only democratic dividend, it was also a demographic dividend. For blacks and colors, it's been disaster.
So given that we're stuck in a rut, and I heard a profound saying many years ago, Dr. Lehotla, that the only difference between a groove and a grave is depth.
Absolutely.
And when we're stuck like that, that means we're dying. There's no growth, there's no development, we're not going anywhere. So take us back to the concept then of how we activate ourselves in this context.
Well, there are a few things that have to be done. Our policies must have future-proof.
And future-proof is what?
Business, when it plans, it says, I'll make profit in year 2027. And then it goes to the market and says, here is the evidence of such happening. Now, in government, you don't have that future-proof. What they are hoping for after thumb-sucking is that growth will be better. I mean, if you think about Treasury saying that we'll grow by 1.1% this year, And the first quarter of the year was 0% growth. The second quarter was 0.3. The third quarter was minus 0.3.
Sure.
So it's zero now.
Yeah.
Can you get 1.1% growth
No way.
in the last quarter? No way you can get that. So you need to model the future. And based on that modeling of the future, you've got to build scenarios. And those scenarios will tell you where you are going. In terms of the scenarios that we have built and quantified at Indulamete, clearly we said this country is going into Guaragwara. We have quantified those scenarios and we could show what set of policies were driving us into the Guaragwara scenario.
So that's in Klamati. So they basically
yes.
they scenario forecast South African. I think the weaver bird and all of these birds.
Yes,
the one that the president quoted.
This is the review of those scenarios.
Right, exactly. And they encapsulate it in this bird metaphor.
Yes,
but
absolutely.
It really creates a good idea for where we will end up in South Africa. So I encourage our viewers to go and have a look at that. I've got to leave it there, but Dr. Lehotla, I just want to appreciate you coming in and sharing just these little nuggets of wisdom. I hope our viewers have enjoyed it. But what you are definitely suggesting is we've got to wake the heck up in South Africa, and we've got to ask better questions and hold the right people's feet to the fire.
Well, if we do that, we wouldn't have closed Komati, and everybody, including the president, regrets why we closed Komati and not holding him responsible.
What do you mean? What should have happened there?
We should hold the people that closed Komati responsible. Because everybody says we shouldn't have closed Komati as though it closed itself. And then we ran short of electricity. This is the kind of society we have become. Absolutely idiots we have become. We are backing at the moon instead of holding those who have to be held to account. I mean, I was driving from KwaZulu-Natal, the drought that is coming. The maize leaf is dry like I don't know what. And with that drought, there will not be food. We also don't have water, and we have not had electricity. And education is performing the way it is in this country. So one of the things that we are suggesting is we have to start buying black, because when we do that, we will be tapping on that monopoly capital that has verticalized itself and exploited the black buying power.
But how do we do that? Are black products and services available in every sector?
When you do that, you start your own.
And where's the money going to come from?
It's not a matter of money. It's a matter of coming together and doing what is right. Because what we have followed through at the moment has yielded the result we have seen from 1994 to 20, and it's left the black people in the same group. Are we going to do that for the next 30 years? Are we going to do that through the government of national unity, where the policies are the same as the ones that preceded the government of national unity? This is the dilemma that we have.
Dr. Padi Lehotla, you've left us with a mic drop moment there in our studio. I would rather have 10 of these discussions than 10 breaking news items, because I feel like this is the content that moves the nation.
This is what the national dialogue should be about. When I said we should have a national dialogue before the election, it was for us to discuss these things so that when we go to vote, we vote on these issues rather than on people who are crossing sewerage and saying we will do this and do that without doing anything about the sewerage. Thank you very much.
Brilliant, guys, brilliant. So I really don't know where to begin. I think the best way to begin is to try to revert to a comment I had on my channel to go through a little bit of an in-depth analysis of the slides which Padi Lehotla actually shows, because in the video they actually didn't stay long. But anyway, I think it's a really interesting thought, and that we begin especially with this last slide where he shows the proportion of people who are skilled to the proportion of the population, that particular population. So in other words, he's actually arguing that, you know, the skilled population here, if we look at this slide carefully, we'll see that this is a graph that was actually populated from a statistical, software. And it actually speaks of the presence, the evidence of skilled employment as a prime outcome of intergenerational value. So the first portion here, chart and from the left to the right speaks of the 1994 to 2016, and the first group above are the whites, the second are the Indians, the third are the coloreds, and the fourth are the blacks. So the gray line speaks of the proportion of the skilled employment as a proportion of the population of the white. We could see here, it says that, skilled employment in the gray, skilled employment, blue actually. So if the population for the whites had actually been 64, according to this scale, the proportion of skilled employment was 42, and then it then moved to 50, then to 48, and then to 41 thereabouts. And then they had a low, I think, from 19 in 25. But for the coloreds as well, the population of the skilled as a percentage of the population of colored people, we see that it has been fluctuating. So it has been 26. These are the Indians now. This is 26. This is 32, 26, 26, 17. Okay. For the coloreds as well, if we take that the larger population as a representative of this chart was 25. There was 11 here, it was now 12, it was then 13, it was 14, and then 7. But we see that it's really low compared to the whites and the Indians. And for the blacks, it has actually been 11, 12, 16, 17, 9. So for the second chart, this is now from 94 to 2017, the proportion of the skilled, according to the skilled versus the population of that particular group. We see that the whites and the Indians relatively remain the same, but for the blacks and the coloreds, it has been stagnant. There hasn't really been a growth in the proportion of the skilled employment between 1994 and 2017 going forward. All right, and then if he push it, he now projected it to 2020, and he argues that he could project it to 2024, and it will still show the same mapping. So we see that for the whites and the Indians, it's also still kind of like the same. There's a high population of skilled employment as a, proportion of the population, while the coloreds and the blacks, in a way, even might have been shrinking or remain stagnant. All right. So there hasn't been really a lot of investment in skills among, blacks and coloreds, according to Pali Lehotla's chart here now in this video. All right. And so that really begs to the question of education. What really has been happening? Why haven't these groups been educated so much? What really has been going on to the part there that their skills development have remained stagnant all these years? And slowly we see that most of these people seem to be the ones who are being pushed to welfare. All right, I'm making the next video by Aaron Motsualedi, who is an analyst, and he argues that I think for him it was even a really worse argument for me, because he argued that I think was it up to 40% of the population of South Africa are on welfare. Let me quickly look for that argument by Aaron Motsualedi, although I'll be making a full video on that anyway. But I think this is striking, that a large proportion of South Africa are on welfare. All right, and that's really important to understand, that you see this stagnancy that has actually happened in terms of skills development among the blacks and the coloreds, I would argue has a lot to do with that, and it's the incapacity for these groups to make and create wealth. According to Pali Lehotla, he argues that it's as a result of the vertical entrenchment of monopoly capital that has actually been in white hands, and it's such a really difficult avenue for the coloreds and the blacks to really tap into that white that capital because of the concentration. He calls it a vertical concentration, but what it really means is that it's really difficult. Capital is in such a way that it would always fight off competition, and so it's difficult for these guys without skills, without the right skills by black South Africans, by colored South Africans. It would be almost impossible to tap into that capital that has actually been kept in the hands of, according to his charts now, many of the Indians and the whites in South Africa. And so the problem now in South Africa is a problem of skills development for these groups. somehow, I don't really know how the GNU has to do it, but there has to be an investment in skills training for the black people and the colored to be able to compete, because as I speak about, the world is becoming a global village. We're becoming a much more global digital space. And so right now, with digital skills, being on the lookout, AI skills and all that, this might be an opportunity for the ANC or the GNU to really engage in training these people, so to speak, so that at the level of skills, they might slowly start getting to the point, and probably at the end of the day, when you have a 10-year, 20-year projection into the future, there might be a shift in that stagnancy, and then we might be able to see a much more balance, so to speak, for the whites, Indians, coloreds, and the blacks at the level of skills development going forward, and then healthy competition. And I believe at this time, probably this whole problem with South Africans really angry with foreigners, illegal foreigners, probably might reduce, because right now there will be a basis for healthy competition. There will be skills acquired by the blacks and the coloreds, and naturally, for illegal foreigners will have to leave because there will be no basis for employment, so to speak, and probably all of that. Because I know from the comments I've been reading, it's been argued that many of the illegal foreigners who are employed by South African businesses and all that, as a result of the fact that they offer cheap services, all right, but also as a result of the fact that the skills some of these employers are looking for are not in South Africa, so to speak. So at the end of the day, they end up hiring foreigners. So this is an argument. So the GNU might need to invest a lot in skills development for these people, because from Palile Hotla's chart here, we see that the skills development as a proportion to the population of these particular groups, the coloreds and the Indians, has remained, the coloreds and the blacks, has remained stagnant from I think this is 1997 all the way to 2020 thereabout. And so I think that's a really problematic, but really interesting that he points that out, and it's really important that we take that into consideration as we continuously analyze these problems in South Africa and hope for a sustainable solution for the nation. But anyway, I don't know, what do you guys think? I don't want this video to be long. Share your thoughts. What do you think about Palile Hotla's analysis here? Share your thoughts in the comments.